In this video, I'm going to disclose the big difference between the wealthy and those living in poverty in retirement. And it's not all about money. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
There are a lot of people right now living in retirement who are living well below the quality of life that they actually could have simply because they haven't mastered 4 or 5 simple techniques. I'm going to spend time going through these with you so that you know what they are and so that you can use them in your own retirement. But before I do, please make sure you click subscribe and notifications so that you get alerted the next time I post a video. I post about twice a week. Now let's get into it. Point number 1 is it's not what you spend, it's how you spend. Let me explain. When I was growing up, my mom used to call it the spendies. Simply put, you would buy to satisfy a spending itch. People who buy because it's a social activity and who get a sense of satisfaction by purchasing something have the spendies. These people have a lot of clothes that they never wear. They buy food at the grocery store that they'll never eat. By the way, I know you know this, but you should never shop while you're hungry because you'll buy things that you probably won't use later on. So if you have the need to spend, at least go to the dollar store and spend there. Point number 2 for those rich in retirement is that they know the difference between worth and value. Recently, I went out and I bought a car, a new pre-owned car. It had 8,000 miles on it and it was 3 years old. This car was one that I was planning on driving to the train station, basically 5,000 miles per year. So over the course of the next decade, I might put 50,000 miles on it in total. The deal was done and I simply had to come in and sign some paperwork and drive the car away. I went to the dealership with a friend of mine because basically I can't drive 2 cars. At the end of the transaction, after the salesperson explained the agreement with me, he called somebody else over to do the paperwork. Now, for anyone buying a car, there are 2 shots the dealership has at getting your money. The first of which is what everybody knows and prepares for, and that's the negotiation on price. Everyone has a war story about how they negotiated down the price to the last dime. I'll tell you mine at the end of the video because it's actually quite appropriate for the last point. And the second point, which is almost invisible to the consumer, is when the dealership sells you protection. So when the salesperson finishes the agreement and the legal side is done, or at least it appears to be done, the salesperson calls someone over to explain the protection packages to you. Now think about this for a second. The salesperson was able to help you narrow down the dozen or so cars at the dealership to the model that's just right for you, and then help you narrow down the packages available to the package, the upgrades that are appropriate for you. But then at that point, he can't talk to you about the protection. Now why is that? At this point, your attention's starting to fade, you think the deal is done, and they need you to pay attention and spend some more. So they call in the protection specialist. Now this person is different. They look different, they talk different. Mine sounded very much like an accountant, to be completely candid. So the trust level is high and your guard is down. He pulled out a menu, a single sheet of paper, and put it right in front of me, and this paper outlined the engine and drive protection, the paint protection, the tire protection, a lot of protection. And the most expensive protection was on the left, the least expensive protection was on the right. On the top, it showed what the increase in the monthly payment would be. In the middle was the description of the protection, and at the bottom was the cash price of the protection in very small numbers. I looked directly at the price at the bottom in small numbers. Interestingly, my buddy who came with me looked at the monthly payment at the top, and I asked the protection specialist what that tiny number was at the bottom. Well, we just want to be totally honest with you with the cost of the protection, and so we put the actual cash price at the bottom, he said. Why is the number so much smaller than the rest of the information if you want to be totally honest? He didn't really have a good answer for that. My guess is that legally they probably have to disclose it, but it didn't really matter. I asked detailed questions about each one of the protection packages, and there seemed to be exclusions for things that were most likely to happen. The paint package covered chips from rocks in the road, but it didn't cover the paint if someone keyed your car, a far more expensive and, frankly, unfortunately, a more likely outcome in many cities. Tire protection is enforced unless you have less than a half inch of tread left, and engine protection was in force unless it was something involving the engine block. You get the point. And for reference, the total cost for engine and drivetrain protection, the price on the left, was $7,995 if you paid cash, and the total cost for paint protection, the price on the right, was $1,995 if you paid cash. Everything else was somewhere in the middle. My friend said, "I don't think you should buy the option on the left. I think you should buy the option on the right." I immediately put my hand on the option on the right and I said, "What is it that you think we're buying?" He actually didn't know. The protection specialist had done a wonderful job of explaining why each of these items was worth $50, $100, $200 more per month, but they had no value to me because I was going to drive the car 5,000 miles per year. And finally, because they tried to overcome every objection and it was clear to me that they were just going to keep going, I asked the question, I already knew the answer to it, "How long do I have to think about it?" 30 days, he replied. "Fine, I won't do it today, but I'll give it some thought," I said. For many people, the price of the protection would have been worth what they were charging, but for me it had no value because I was going to drive the car 5,000 miles per year. But the way the presentation was put forward, they were trying to build the argument that there's a lot of worth in what we have to offer when I was looking at the value to me personally. Most people would have said, "I don't want to go with the column on the left, I want to go with the column on the right." That's just what they do when they're presented with a menu. Point number 3 for those that live a rich lifestyle in retirement is that they make the seller earn their money. Now let me explain. Have you ever been to a restaurant and the person you were with asked the server a lot of questions? Can it be made gluten-free? Can it be made dairy-free? Can it be made vegetarian? Can it be made vegan and gluten-free? I will bet that if you are out with that same person when they're shopping, they will do the same thing. They'll ask the salesperson questions that are difficult, but when you think about them, they're actually quite smart. The salesperson invariably won't know the answer, and the person you're with will press. The salesperson will go in the back and get the answer and come back. And here's what happens most of the time. At the end of the process, the person asking the questions doesn't buy the product. The reason is because they found out something about the product or service that they don't like, simply by asking the right questions. They would have found it out eventually, probably when they took it home, but it's better to find out before you buy the product than after. Now, have you been to their house? I will bet you that it is clean and well decorated. And if you know them personally, I will bet you that they do not live beyond their means. Most people look at price and presentation and make a buying decision right then and there. This is the foundation for most timeshare sales, by the way. But any product or service has something that's not good. That's just the nature of a product or service. And most companies don't go out of their way to tell you what that something is. But the person who lives rich in retirement reduces and maybe even eliminates the number of buying mistakes that they make in any year by asking the right questions and making the salesperson work for the sale. The next point is that the person who lives rich in retirement knows where they sit on their financial map. If I asked the average employee about what they did during the day, they'd be able to tell me what time they started, what time they ended, and the types of projects that they worked on during the day. If I asked that same employee what their gross take-home pay was every pay period, what the company took out in state taxes, what the company took out in federal taxes, and what the company took out in 401k contributions, that employee, 9 times out of 10, wouldn't have any idea. If you ask that same person how much they spend on food for their house, fuel for their car, or how much they spend eating out every month, again, they would have no idea. 9 times out of 10. I could go on and on with this example, but I think you get the point. There are 2 reasons why this happens. The first is that many people don't think that they need to know the answer to those questions. And the second is that they think it doesn't matter. What will be, will be. By the way, what will be is the death knell in personal finance. And then there are the few that know where every dollar goes every month. They know if an expense category goes up. They know if it goes down. They know why it goes up. They'll ask their employer why their taxes went up on their paycheck. This is the type of person who lives rich in retirement. They go to the grocery store twice a week instead of once every 2 weeks because they notice that they're throwing out a lot of food. They buy less, but they buy fresh, and they consume everything that they buy. They learned years ago how to program their thermostat, and they know that gas is 50 cents a gallon cheaper 5 miles farther down the road in the town with the lower taxes than in their hometown, and that second gas station just happens to be on the way to work, so they fill up there instead of closer to home. They pay attention. There are literally hundreds of ways for you to reduce the costs in your life by simply knowing where you sit on the financial map and paying attention. If you like this video, please make sure you click subscribe and notifications. Retirement information is changing fast, and I work very hard to get what's out there and here for you. Also, check out this video on what to do if you're 60 years old and you have no retirement savings. This is Jeff Schmidt. Thanks for watching.